It's the weekly 30-30 trading list on the ASX. We're reviewing the 30 best momentum companies over the last quarter and the ones that have had the best momentum improvement this week, what we call the Launchpad. Gary Glover has been through the two lists, pulled out his favourite charts, and he's going to walk us through them now. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, Chris.
It's Friday, end of financial year. It's a big day for many, many reasons. There's a whole trading strategy that you've talked about before with end of tax, sort of the dogs become the darlings, go from June to July. So a lot can happen today. When you're looking through the lists and looking at momentum companies, are you seeing anything overarching happening here, or what are you picking out of the momentum list today?
Yeah, look, definitely notice the smalls are popping. So like a lot of the small resource companies sort of suddenly coming to life. And there's quite a few sort of pops in those smalls there, which sort of makes them a bit hard to trade there because they're sort of not as liquid as some, and they're not like building established trends. Like they just sort of pop pretty aggressively. So it makes it a bit hard there. There's a little bit of life in the small end, which is interesting. It's probably will probably make a few people happy out there who have been sitting in some of these underperforming stocks here. Obviously, the small caps have been pretty weak overall. Thought I'd start with a little quote. I always like to throw a trading quote in for the week. There is no such thing as truth in trading. There is only edge. And I thought it was a nice one there. Really basically sort of, we're looking at probability. There's a game of probability. We're really just trying to build ourselves a process and an edge. We are going to get some wrong, but hopefully our edge will prevail and we'll get some wins there. And that's obviously with these sort of the launch pad and the quality momentum there. At the edge here is to sort of try and trade the stronger stocks. They're typically the ones that go up. They manage to sort of keep going up and go up for a lot longer than everyone anticipates. And we're trading the ones that are actually moving up, Chris, rather than the ones that are going down. So as I was sort of highlighted before, if you look at those sort of stocks making new highs and stocks making new lows, you can go back to those lists, day after day or week after week. The stocks that keep making new lows, it's often people are looking for those to sort of turn around. Those are the ones continue to keep making new lows. And the ones that are making new highs can, miraculously keep making new highs a lot longer than everyone anticipates. And that's the principle of Davis box and Davis, who, really used to just sort of buy stocks that were breaking out at 52-week highs there. I think, Larry Hyde talks about a strategy about buying those 52-week highs. I think having a 5% stop on buying them there. Although the failure rate is pretty high, there's definitely a pretty strong return historically just from that pretty basic sort of setup there. So, but thought I'd get on the list here. So AW1 was sort of one that I sort of saw on the list there. It's got some reasonable volume there, a little small here. Just really put this one on the watch list to sort of maybe watch for some sort of consolidation. Just some of these smalls are having the pop, good volume, having a breather, and then maybe going again. So we just want to, there's quite a few of them have sort of popped here. We really want to sort of see them have a bit of a breather here. Just keep an eye watch them there. We really want to see something nice and tight there, Chris, and that consolidation, volume dry up, and possibly they can go again. SLM's had a pretty big move here. Decent volume all the way through, having a bit of a breather at the moment. Still a little tricky there, but MM1 was number 4 on the list. Look, you could argue there was a little bit of a VCP in there, but fairly traded there pretty thin as well, which is sort of makes it a bit difficult with some of the smalls to sort of trade there. Number 5, XAM. Some decent volume there, but we've started to see a decent volume come back in the sell here. So this is sort of see how we've sort of turned down a little bit impulsively there, and the selling has sort of come in there. So that's not what you want to see there. If those stocks that have run sort of pretty hard and then consolidate and run again, they don't do that. So they normally sort of price action's a lot tighter and the volume's a lot lighter there. So once you start to sort of see the volume coming on the sell, that's what we want to avoid there. LRS is pretty interesting there. There's still some big volumes there, considering the stock sort of looks like it's run quite a bit, but as we know, Chris, sometimes they can continue to run. So this one here is just one to watch there for a possible consolidation, just because the volume is still pretty robust. VIT, just highlight this one. There's a nice little three-way pullback, a nice little consolidation, nice and tight there. So that's our sort of VCP. And then once it broke out of this pattern there, it's had a bit of a run here as well. So this is what we're sort of really looking for. Obviously, you probably like something a bit more liquid. But yeah, we like to see this sort of nice and tight consolidation and light volume there. That's,
That's definitely a tight consolidation there. Just a question maybe to help the viewers here is that April and May, you've got two standout volume days there that are clearly distorting our reading for the rest of the year. And as you mentioned, it's liquid. Is there anything to read into those, or it's in a liquid company, probably a news day or a large position? How do you use that and then interpret the rest of the chart?
Yes, I like to see the big volume there because it's sort of like someone, the seller's finally given up, sold a big stake out there, and someone's finally stepped in and took it off their hands. So that's interesting. And then coming off the lows here is obviously another line of stock here as well. So someone's sort of starting to participate. That both of those are around the same price level there. You look at where they are as well. So the thing, you always got to look at those big volume bars there, because the question just asks, is it accumulation or is it distribution? Just interesting there. That's obviously been, someone's obviously accumulated a decent position there. Sort of down at some pretty key levels there, and it stayed pretty tight there, got going here. So to me, when I see big volume lines there, just that's what I like to see. Gets me interested. It gets me doing a bit more homework there. Another one on the list there is that satire there, Chris. Is this is sort of one that looked a little heavy up here, but again, these sort of leaders continue to lead, and all it's done here is had a nice little tight three-way pullback there. Not too much volume in there. Saw one little bit of selling and one little bit of selling in there. But the whole process there is pretty light all through here. Saw a little bit of, volume bar on the inside day here. We've kicked up here. Probably breaking a little B wave is sort of what something I look for there. That would have been maybe the first little trigger for me, is to sort of go above that little last swing high there. So again, there's sort of stocks that are leading there. We just want to see consolidation and go again. So that's the type of thing we're looking for there. Just most people will sort of look at that stock and originally go, it's run too high, I won't go near it. And history tells us those are the ones who continue to keep running. BM8, battery
age minerals.
Battery age minerals. So obviously this sector, lots of these sort of stocks are running pretty hot here. So good volume through there so far. Nice early mover there, sort of like a lot of these, IPO, like this IPO sort of trend is to sort of come on hot, everyone gets excited, the news dries up, they fade, and then they start to build again. So that's the sort of, as a life cycle trader, they sort of study those IPOs. So that's just a bit of a pattern to sort of watching out for there. And we're broken out there. So I think it's something like 93% of IPOs since 2007. It might have been actually the last 20, 30 years actually. I think something like 93%. 82%, something like. Go back and retest the low in the first 39 weeks. In the last 3 years, it's been something like 93%. So that's why sometimes everyone thinks, I've got to get my hands on that IPO, well, the statistics actually suggest otherwise.
You can probably wait.
You can probably wait for them to, let all the hot money sort of come out of it first, let it ease off and come back and retest the lows, get a bit dull, and then once it starts to build, that's when they have a look at them. So a bit more risk involved in trading IPOs, a bit more volatile, but can be quite rewarding at the same time as well. What have we got there? IIQ. I thought this one was sort of interesting. It's had a pretty decent volume there. It's a little, didn't see that gap this morning. I just thought that looked pretty interesting just because the volume was pretty decent there. And that was a pretty wide range day and the volume was quite light. and then we've had another massive day, and then we've gapped up here. But again, you probably just put that in your radar, keep an eye on it. MI6, which is the code for big volume there, Chris. So big volume on this drive here. So yeah, you just got to watch those little bit. When they see big volumes there, sometimes they'll be a bit exhausted. But you've got 4 days back to back here, so that's pretty interesting. So but watch this one. Pull back a little volume there yesterday, pretty light volume again today. It's really tight here. So that's one to sort of keep an eye on there, just because that volume is so big. So
I think the news on that was they were the spin-off of a lithium miner and separating the non-core lithium assets. But funnily enough, in the last couple of weeks, it looks like they might have some lithium in some of those assets that they spun off. So the non-lithium assets were becoming somewhat lithium again. That coincides with some of those big volume days.
Yeah.
So, like what you've been saying for the last couple of weeks, those strong themes just keep coming back, and those leading themes can lead longer than what we expect.
Yeah, no, definitely. Lots of movement there. Thought this GRX was sort of interesting there. Bit of a lightly traded stock, so a little bit difficult there, the green metals. But a nice sort of cup and handle here, Chris, on this sort of, chart here. So we've sort of seen this, it's had a strong run, had a bit of a pullback, and then look how tight that handle is. So what that means is that, when you sort of see this tight consolidation here, so it struggles to sort of go down. This is a bit of a David Ryan thing there, sort of congesting sort of just under the high. And then once you break through that, that's sort of what they're looking for there. You've sort of broken through the little handle there. And, volume starts to increase here as well. So that little congestion under the high there, this little cup and handle there is a good sort of setup to look for.
And on reading that congestion, it looks like the volume was super dry throughout that April-May period when it's congesting.
Yeah, which is perfect. Yeah,
big volume in March. So clearly someone's picked up some shares under 60 cents, done well, but didn't do any selling in the high 70 region, did they?
Yeah. So when you see that, that type of consolidation there, all that just sitting under the high, there's no volume through that whole period there. Yeah. So we start seeing things like that. I guess that they're ones to sort of put on your radar. So I sort of have a watch list there, Chris, for these sort of, BCP, sort of lists and stuff there. So just, if it looks like it's sort of starting to build something, just put it in the watch list, and then you just sort of keeping checking on it. Sometimes these things can take a month to set up here. That might have taken weeks and weeks and weeks. So you just keep sort of checking them to see how they're progressing there. FCL's had a nice move here. Nice little tight congestion, a little pop. That looks all right. IR1, RS Metals number 29 there. Just a bit small here. Just thought it was interesting. Just because this has been probably, trading faulty for a long time. Opens up here and basically does a little consolidation and then pops out on good volume there. So pretty hard to sort of, look at that one, but just interesting at having that little consolidation. CLG, which has closed the loop there, just made a new 52-week high, Chris, which is interesting. So this is sort of in that, what do you call it? They recycle plastic and stuff like that. So in that sort of green space. Yeah. So, basically gone to a new high here. So, so I had that nice consolidation there, sort of started coming out of it. Volumes are okay there, pretty steady. But it has gone, we'll close here at a new 52-week high here this week. Yeah. So that's sort of something that Davis would have looked at previously there. It's fine there. So that's our quarterly momentum there. Looking at our short term here, so our weekly launch pad there. Number 2 on the list there was actually Dub, just because, this is probably, the stock's on its knees here, but starting to see a bit of volume coming there, Chris, as well. Has broken above a swing high to, although it's only just gone marginally above it there. But this is just one to sort of keep an eye on here, just because the volumes have increased. Has broken a swing high there, so maybe possible change of character. But it's still pretty want to see a bit more. It's definitely not a leader at this stage, but just one to sort of keep an eye on. HCH thought was pretty interesting. Possible VCP in here, Chris, as well. Sort of, this is like a big sort of cup here, possible handle there. I think that longer term pattern, it's not bad. He was sort of just congesting under the high here. So, okay, volume there. Just still sort of in the setup stage here, but interesting somewhat there. I think it's a copper and gold play out of Chile. Did see that Glencore hold about the biggest shareholder, 9.11% of the holding there. So interesting that the biggest miners on the planet holds a big stake. So yes, this is one to keep an eye on. Actually, it's a nice little technical pattern there. Probably a bit of volume sort of come in here off this sort of jump as well. So yeah, I think if it sort of breaks through here, it could be one to keep an eye on there. So yeah, thought that was one of the more interesting ones. Harvey Norman was number 10 on the list. Had a nice little pop here. We talked about these sort of retail sectors the other day. Sort of, thought it was going to be a news-related event, which would probably wash them out. That would be the, sort of like, it's almost like it's buy the rumor, sell the fact in reverse here. So, pricing in doom and gloom recession. And so the PE for Harvey Norman there got down to about 5 there, Chris, which if you look at the historical average, it's between 10 and 11 is where it sort of traded predominantly for the last 10 years. So, even if you give it a haircut, 15, 20% in earnings, assume the worst, still trading historically really, really cheap there at 320. Hence why I sort of added it to my model portfolio. But yeah, we'll see if we can get going. It's still going to be a little bit tough there for retailers there, but I think the sort of the bad news might already be priced in. So these are the type of things that will probably turn some of these stocks here. So yeah, definitely a sector to keep an eye on there. I think just because negativity gotten so high historically there, when everyone gets very negative, everyone says stay away from that sector. It's just you're so close to the low in that sector. If we look at sentiment for the last couple of years to the same degree, Endeavour's one interesting. Sort of had a bit of a run here. Watching this one closely there, just like to sort of see whether it actually, the next sort of counter move there. I noticed there, if you look at the weekly chart, it's sort of history there. It hasn't, it's taken out the 2022 low, but not the 21 low, which was sort of the starting point. So oftentimes they do come back to here. So it'll be interesting to see how this counter move happens. It's a deep retracement already. But yeah, watch this counter move here and just see whether, the selling. So I'm still in the downtrend. So when I see what happens here on the counter trend, so I'm looking for, hopefully this does some sort of pennant flag here, maybe sets up. Worst case scenario comes back to a new low. Let me look at it then. But yeah, it's definitely one to sort of keep an eye on here at the moment. One thing I did notice on the list, Chris, was some of the ag stocks there. So we had Grain Corp, we had Rural Funds Group. And I reckon Elder's probably just missed out. It sort of popped the last few days as well here. So yeah, some okay volume in there. It's a nice little inverse head and shoulders there. If you look at the weekly sort of setup there, what I like here is some good volume. Pull back on some lighter volume. We've seen the volume come back in again. So it's kind of constructive here. I think Grain Corp's had like a 50% correction on the weekly range as well. So we look at the back end of this high here. So it's had a fairly deep pullback here. So yeah, just definitely a sector to closely keep an eye on there. I think the RFF was on the list as well. It's had a bit of a jump here, good volume off that low. Just pulling back here on some lighter volumes. Still in a massive downtrend there, so it hasn't even broken a high there. But just that volume sort of interesting. Haven't had a closer look at this one yet, but you wouldn't be rushing to this one here just because the trend is still sort of down here. Doesn't meet any of my criteria, but just notice that some of those stocks are moving there. And so sort of Elders had a bit of a pop there. Volumes volumes are elevated here over the last 5 or 6 weeks. That's always something which does sort of catch the eye. Hum was sort of one that I thought looked interesting as well. Again, got that sort of big washout low there, building a first higher low, and I think this is probably the only buy now pay later stock that actually makes money, Chris. So Probably one of the few that I would look at. And yeah, it's had some okay volume here recently off this low here, so definitely one to sort of keep an eye on. ARV, big volume the last few weeks there, nice and tight here, little small price wise, but the big volume sort of just put it on my radar. ADT was sort of one that's got some volume at the low as well. Sort of consolidating here at the moment. Probably I'd like to see it consolidate a bit more. ADT, ACL, Australian Clinic Labs. I thought this was an interesting here, Chris, just because had that impulsive move here. It's had this sort of corrective decline here. I think this is like 4 weeks or something, or maybe 5 weeks, and then 10 weeks here. And we're sort of holding up here. So now we're sort of starting to, get a first high low. A little bit of a B wave break there yesterday. Volume's okay. But there's a bit going on here with that potential takeover of Helios, which is twice the size of ACL. So I don't think not too many expecting that to get done. But I think that Australian Clinical Labs obviously do a lot of pathology and stuff there. So pretty robust sort of sector there. Definitely worth watching now. I think it's grown its revenue over 15% too. So that sort of definitely falls into my sort of my revenue list there in terms of companies that have got strong revenue. UIW I thought was interesting there. Just again, we sort of had that some okay volume here recently. Get a bit exhaustive end of the low, sort of built here. Had a bit of a little ABC in there. We just sort of start to break through this little B wave here as well. So just sort of broken out of that after having a pretty reasonable decline here. So the volumes are fairly robust, so not the worst looking chart there. IMM was the last on the list there. Just possible B wave break there. Just look pretty messy here. It's had a big jump here. Come back and fill that gap, which they often do, maybe starting to build in. The volumes are probably pretty interesting there because they sort of, the stock that doesn't really trade a lot of volume historically there, and the last sort of month or so, we've seen volumes up here, so something afoot there at the moment. But yeah, probably want to keep an eye on. They probably want to break above this sort of 32 there. But yeah, just want to keep an eye on. That's about it, Chris. A little bit messy there, but a couple of things there to keep an eye on, and the small seem to be sort of happening there, so be keeping an eye on some of those as well.
But just thinking about the list that you're keeping an eye on, you've mentioned there that sometimes a company will be on that list and they can take weeks to build sort of that base. There was a liquid one in the list where you said, look, this is built a base for about 8 weeks, 10 weeks or so. So how long are you leaving a company on your list, and does it have to do something wrong to get crossed off your list and drop out, or how do you manage that?
Yeah, so there's I think I can sort of find one example here. Is it? No, that's not. I was trying to find this. I mean, they can be on there for quite a while. If there's a big sort of monthly sort of setup there, I will I sort of will watch it for quite a while. And if it's a setup that I've seen before, sort of, and it sort of sounds funny. It might spike up a big volume, settle back, spike up again, settle back, spike up again. So the whole thing's sort of building and consolidating nice and tight there. Those are sort of setups that I might be looking at there. So there's one small one at the moment, which I'm watching. It's that sort of setup there, but it could take a while. It could take, and I need to sort of see support here. And there's no point in me trying to buy the low here because it could just break down. I want to sort of start to see it coming in and start to coming out. So again, prefer to sort of see them above the 50-day moving average, see them, just showing that sort of signs of strength there, be in the leading sectors as well. So so it's just to be patient with them as well. So there's sometimes you see sort of stocks there. Like I sort of know, been watching sort of Paradigm for a while. I'm surprised that sort of come off as hard as it has. So I've been watching this one for the last couple of weeks there, just because it did come down and retest the low. So me, I like my false breaks here. So it did come back and retest the low. So I like to sort of see those, retest the old lows and then not fly through. And yeah, so we saw a bit of volume down here, but yeah, sort of high, low, nice sort of congestion, little VCP in here, and now we've just sort of started to pop up here. We've also sort of just popped up through the 50-day moving average as well. So two things I like to sort of, I like the false breaks, but I like to sort of see this little tight VCP struggle to go down and then start to pop through. We've just seen a bit of a block of volume here too the last 3 or 4 days. So yeah, some early signs there. So those are the type of things. So I might be watching that for a couple of weeks. Some other patterns which, if you think about something like this, I think I was watching this for a month or two, looking for it to break out of here. I might have even traded this one here and had a stop on it and got traded out of it. But that's a nice little VCP as well in there.
So this one possibly added to your shortlist as a false break setup, and you were monitoring that to see how it traded out, whether there was something indicating it was turning. And then while it was building a base from that false break, it also ticked your VCP box as well, did it?
Yeah, well, look, two things there. I remember trading this one on this setup here. This was a little VCP in here, and it tightened up here, and then it sort of, took a long time to finally sort of get a little B-wake break here. So I might have even bought on this day or in this day here, and thinking that this is a nice VCP in there. There was a few up days in there, but they sort of did kind of react there, but we did see a bit of volumes come in there. But then once it started to break down here, I think once it probably broke this little swing high for me, I would have been out, would have stopped me out there. So it just means, probably had a small loss on that, not too much there, because I would have been running under the swing high there. But then, yeah, it's come off, quite surprised actually how deep it's come here. But then now I've been watching it here the last week or two. Started, saw this little tight consolidation there, like what I saw. Little starting spot there with a really tight stop there, so I'm not risking much. And then as it breaks through here, then I'm looking to sort of try and add to this. And being above the 50-day moving average is quite important to me now. So yeah, some good little signs there.
Oh, so that's a good breakdown of how you monitor the trades, the setups, and get set into it. And we'll probably close on that with a good, strong breakdown of lists of the momentum quarterly leaders, the launchpad, the best performers for the week, and some insights into position management and watch list management. So thank you, Gary Glover from Novus Capital.
Thanks, Chris.
So Gary talked about a few positions, a bit like Paradigm on screen and other ones that he does have in his portfolio. There's a whole playlist over there on the right-hand side of Gary's Tuesday reports, where he goes into those in detail. And then also some of the trading strategies like the false breaks, springs, and VCPs that have just been mentioned. There's a whole playlist. And the left-hand side, there's Gary Glover's Twitter handle if you want to follow him there.